Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for this Monday morning outrunning the cost of living. This is a program that we do every Monday morning at 8:30 Eastern Time to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. So we thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to be discussing a very, very interesting topic. At least I consider it a very interesting topic, and it's why you can be doing everything right and still be falling behind. Literally everything right based on what you were taught as growing up to get an education, do your homework, go to college, get a good degree, even a degree in computer science, a degree in technology, whatever the case may be. You can be doing all the things right and still be falling behind in a number of ways. So we're going to discuss that topic in just a second. We're going to go over a video and then we're going to kind of dissect the video this morning. But before we do that, I wanted to provide a little background about myself. My name is O'Brien, and I have been trading the markets since I was a senior in high school. I got introduced to the markets by an economics teacher. The economics teacher in high school had us follow stocks from a newspaper back then and showed us the first Wall Street movie. And from a few other events, I knew at that time that I wanted to be a part of these markets. I wanted to play some significant role in these markets. So if you fast forward several years, I eventually became a registered investment advisor. I held the license 65 for registered investment advisors. I ran a volatility hedge fund for a decade, and I'm now the CEO of Dorian Trader, which is an options mentoring firm that specializes in teaching individuals how to trade options. We'll talk about the Dorian Trader in just a second, or just in a little bit. But for now, let's jump into what we call the problem. This week's cost of living pain point. Once again, let me kind of set the premise here. This video is about 8 to 12 months old, but it still applies today. A lot of things are actually worse today than what was pointed out in this video. So I thought it would be a good thing to kind of discuss and or review and then discuss, and you'll kind of get the feel. If you have any comments, we encourage you to pull it in the comment area. We would love to hear your comments. We'd love to get some feedback on what you think regarding this video. Is it really true that you can do everything right, all the different things that you were taught when you were growing up, and still be behind and feel like you're behind? Not just feel like you're behind, but literally be behind. We'll kind of break it down, some of these major cost of living issues that even if you are making 100,000, which most Americans do not, most households still don't make 100,000, how you could be falling behind, especially if you don't have any assistance from the bank of mom and dad. So we'll discuss that now. So let me bring this video over and let's hit play on this video and let's listen to it here.
This is a mock monthly household budget for an American family in 1985. If we compare that to a hypothetical budget in 2022, we can see that most expenses scaled with inflation, with a few exceptions. Rent, out-of-pocket healthcare costs, and childcare are notably more expensive in 2022, even when accounting for inflation.
This is already a really big list already, you guys. A huge list, and I'm not going to stop the video too much, but major things have changed since 1985. Major things have changed since I got out of high school, since I've got out of college. Major things have changed since the pandemic, since 2020. Prices are significantly higher for rent and being able to buy a house and childcare and unfortunately food as well. Significantly higher. Let's continue.
And costs associated with retirement increased by more than 60%. But these numbers are not accounting for a big X factor: consumer debt, such as credit cards and student loans. Total outstanding consumer credit was nearly $600 billion in December 1985. By 2022, it was nearly $4.9 trillion.
Debt has been rising over time. Student loans weren't really a thing for baby boomers.
Millennials have larger student loan balances, bigger mortgages, much bigger car payments than their parents did a generation ago. In addition to more expensive childcare costs, higher prices pretty much across the board. So that does make it more difficult to set extra money aside or make any long-term plans.
We're living in two separate economies. The American dream that was pitched to the Gen Xers and the boomers is no longer present in today's world.
A lot of people, particularly the working class and the part of the middle class, don't think their children will be as well off as they were. That's a problem.
Many people live in what I describe as at break even. Over the course of the year, they might make enough money to pay for basic living expenses and cover their bills. But if one major thing happens, then they can get behind.
Here's why young American adults are struggling to make ends meet and what can be done. Millennials' net worth quadrupled from $3.9 trillion to nearly $16 trillion between 2019 and 2024, but more than half report living paycheck to paycheck.
A lot in this group have benefited from a strong jobs market and rising wages. And during the pandemic, many people bought a home. That made a lot of people wealthier, but more on paper. The disconnect between being rich on paper and feeling well off has been referred to as phantom wealth. Your net worth has gotten greater, but you're not feeling richer necessarily.
It's taking young adults longer than their parents to meet some milestones, such as living on their own, buying property, and starting a family.
And let me stop this for a second and talk about that phantom wealth. That is an interesting term, interesting concept, and that's a lot of what Americans are experiencing. They are what is called kind of rich on paper because of your house, right? You're kind of house rich, but cash poor. Let me repeat that. You're house rich, but cash poor. Your value of your house has went up a ton. But if you take that money out, right, you're going to just say you sell your house. Well, you're going to have to go live somewhere new. Where are you going to live at? Right? Are you going to downgrade your lifestyle? Perhaps, right? But that's still going to cost a lot more, right? If you're going to go rent a place, it's going to cost you at least $2,000 a month. If you're going to go rent a place that's equivalent to what you're currently living in, because if your house is worth a lot, it's probably in a good area and a good house. So it's going to be it's hard for people just to be able to downgrade, because what they're buying or renting is going to be more than their mortgage, more than their house that can potentially be going for $1 million. And if you kind of borrow against it, then now you're increasing your monthly obligations because you have to pay that monies back. So you can literally be house rich but cash poor. And so the cost of living can really be still affecting you because you don't have enough income coming in to be able to cover the necessities of just basic living. So let's continue this video.
It's a lot harder for young people today to save up for markers of the American dream than it was for previous generations. When we look at home buying, as we all know, we're in historically tight housing markets. There are very few homes on the market, and those that are on the market are extremely expensive, not to mention expensive mortgage rates. And the prices of homes has escalated over the last few decades much faster than actual incomes. So it is actually much harder for a millennial or a Gen Z to save up for a down payment to buy a home.
It's not the overspending.
So unfortunately, I have to interrupt again because this is another interesting point, is that I always like to say, if you're starting from scratch, right, you are someone who did everything right. You went to school, you got good grades, you graduated, you got a bachelor's degree in a good field, you continued and maybe got a master's, and you have all this kind of student debt, because you were doing what was told for you to do, but you were starting from scratch. Your parents didn't have monies to help you go to college, right? You had to do it on your own. Yeah, you got some grants and some, you know, things like that, but it was still a lot. So you had to borrow money. Now you get your job, and let's just say you get a job and you're making $100,000 a year, right? You got a good job, or what is considered a good job, and you go, and the house that you are looking to buy is, you know, 700 to $1 million, right? You're just trying to buy a basic home because you live in a major city, you know, especially on one of the coasts. And obviously you can find a house potentially cheaper than that. But I'm just, for easy math, I just want you to see how difficult this is. And you can extrapolate and add kids to this. You can add, you know, daycare and all those kind of things to it. But I'm just talking about you making $100,000. You go to buy a house from scratch. Well, if your house, for example, is $1 million, well, who's going to be able to put down 200,000? Right? How many people can do that from scratch? Okay, so you're going to put down, 5%. Well, that's 50,000. That's still a big haul, right? But let's say you did that. Well, your payment is going to be significantly high. You're not going to even be able to afford the house. And if we drop that down to even a $700,000 house, which is more realistic for people, because the medium house is 400,000, you still won't be able to afford that. And just buying a house that is, the average median house, 400,000, you might not even be able to afford that. And you're making $100,000 a year, and you did everything right, because your student loan that's a lot, and then all other different things that are associated with the cost of living these days. So you have to find a way to outrun it. Let's continue this video.
It's the cost of living. I think the middle class, unfortunately, is dead for millennials and Gen Zers. Or best case scenario, the goalpost has just moved and it's still obtainable, but you have to make over 6 figures to have that middle class life. But people who are older were in a better economic time growing up, because the big difference is what I call the big three. Millennials and Gen Zers are faced with outrageous housing prices, whether it's rent or owning, massive monthly college student loan debt payments, and daycare.
Freddie Smith made a career shift from actor to realtor and started making content about the state of the housing market.
In the summer of 2023, I was maybe one of the first or the handful that was able to say, hey, the housing prices hit 420, the interest rates hit 7%. You now need $120,000 to qualify for a home. And it went viral. And then it just bled into people asking comments and me making more videos. Then it got into the boomer versus millennial debate, and it just kind of continued to grow from there, and it took its own shape. I had to rebuild my life in my early 30s, so I'm really relating to the 22-year-olds who are building their life, and it's a totally different economy than when I built mine when I was 19.
Not being able to save for a home has big retirement implications for millennials and Gen Z.
Those who don't own homes, now those are people who are in real trouble. They're trying to save to get their own place. They're paying high rent somewhere. They're commuting a long distance or trying to work at home so they can save on childcare or so they can save just on housing costs. Those living patterns are increasingly what's happening for younger workers.
In the 1980s, the typical first-time homebuyer was in their late 20s. With a 30-year mortgage, that would mean they owned their home outright by the time they retired in their 60s, providing them with a better chance at sticking to a fixed income in their retirement. A national housing shortage, high rent prices, and competition from wealthier buyers are all making it harder for young adults to buy their first home. In 2024, the median first-time homebuyer was 38 years old, an all-time high.
So I said this video was a little old. Excuse me. I said this video was a little old, and that the median age of someone buying a house in 2024 was 38. It's now new information out in 2026 as of, let's say it's January when we're doing this video. It's already at 40. It's already at 40. So if it's going to take you 30 years to pay off your house, let's just say that's the case. Well, you're going to be 70 years old when you get out of that house, right? When you pay that house off, excuse me. So it's only worsening. Maybe it's going to get to the point where if you do not have the bank of mom and dad, you're just not going to be able to buy a house in major cities or period in the United States. It's just going to be too expensive. You'll be 50 years old before you buy a house, and who wants to, potentially be buying their first house at 50 with a 30-year mortgage? Hopefully AI and all this new technology will allow us to live longer, and then maybe that's an option, but that's significantly different than a lot of our parents when they grew up, significantly different than for a lot of us that's watching this video right now. We had a better situation. Cost of living was significantly more affordable for someone making a basic salary. Now you really have to be making not just 100,000. You have to be making, in my opinion, 150 plus thousand, especially if you have a family, just to be able to do the same things that you potentially did growing up with your parents. Being able to buy a house on a lot of us parents bought houses on on a single income. That's almost extinct now. Definitely going to be as time goes by if these prices don't change. So let's continue.
High.
You have a lot of people 25 to 34 who are looking to start a family and cannot find a home for their families. Maybe the homes aren't where they want them to be inside the city, but even outside a city, it's been very difficult for young families to find a place.
So I think it's healthy for us to try to find different ways that maybe home ownership doesn't have to be the symbol of the American dream. But then to counter that, on my own point, I encourage those who can afford homes to buy it, because once it's paid off, you're going to have a more comfortable retirement because you're not going to be subject to the ever-increasing rent prices.
Many Americans are navigating a new kind of economic instability, which traditional financial advice may not prepare them for. Rachel Schneider co-authored the book, The Financial Diaries, with NYU professor Jonathan Mordock. They spent a year tracking the granular spending habits of 235 families.
What we saw was a huge amount of volatility. That was our core finding. The majority of Americans work hourly jobs. And so for them, the amount of money that they earn fluctuates week by week. I get 30 hours this week versus 45 hours next week. And so as a result, income is really up and down over the course of a month. And that flies in the face of all of the budgeting advice we usually give people.
There's a difference between surviving and thriving. And I just think if we're going to claim that we're the richest country, the best country in the world, why isn't everyone who's working 40 hours, 50 hours a week thriving? How is that possible?
On top of income instability, cost of living is increasingly unstable.
Tariffs have added a lot of uncertainty into future economic conditions. We don't really know how this is going to play out just yet. And if people start to feel nervous about what lies ahead, then they may dial back on things like consumer spending.
The tariffs are creating uncertainty for those people. They don't know what to do. Businesses aren't hiring more people. They're just waiting to see they have a stable business environment they can go. Without stability, they can't. At the same time, the tariffs are going to create a big sales tax on lower income people who spend more on the basics, which are going to go up. And so that's going to create problems for them too.
What the historians tell us that every single new generation gets complaints from the older generation about how they're behaving irresponsibly, immorally, blaming millennials for spending too much on avocado toast.
It's not student loans or a tough job market keeping millennials from buying homes. It's reportedly avocado toast.
The one piece of advice for young people out there who are spending their money on avocado toast and don't have any goals, what would you say to them?
I would say to them, get as much pleasure out of saving as you do spending.
This kind of advice is usually framed as a warning against lifestyle creep, which is the idea that as people earn more, they suddenly start to spend more, and that's what prevents them from properly saving.
I think that's why there's so much confusion, because you can point to a millennial who spends $1,200 on DoorDash. Not good. But you can also point to a millennial who's very financially conscious, making $80,000 and is drowning in debt and is living with a roommate and is a lawyer at 29 years old. That is not right. If someone got straight A's in school, straight A's in college, got a bachelor's, got a master's degree, and is 29 making $80,000 and can't even get their own apartment, let alone purchase a house or have financial stability.
So this point is what I'm trying to point out in this video today, right? You can be doing everything correctly, everything right based on what you were told, and you can still be drowning in debt, drowning with uncertainty, drowning with the feeling of no future.
So that's where I think there's something broken in the system.
Even though households have become significantly wealthier, many consumer goods are also a lot more expensive. And at the same time, Americans are now largely on their own when it comes to things like insurance, retirement savings, healthcare. That makes it harder just across the board to feel financially secure. In some ways, Americans are even more financially vulnerable now. Even as prices have come up significantly, consumer spending hasn't really changed that much. And that leaves more Americans relying on things like credit cards to kind of make ends meet at the end of the month. With economists now forecasting a possible recession in the months or year ahead, there's a greater chance that many Americans won't be prepared for an economic shock.
There aren't so many people in the middle class. There's a big working class. Those are people who helped elect the president, who want stable jobs, who want rising wages.
All right, so that's ended there due to time purposes, but you guys get you get the point, right? You can once again have done everything right and still be falling behind because the cost of living is outpacing your income, outpacing the advancements that you made. So you have to figure out a way to outrun it, right? Outrun the cost of living. And so we think the solution is learning how to trade options, how to supplement your income with options. Now, this is not like a overnight get rich type of scheme. You're going to have to learn this process. It's not going to take you 4 years. You're not going to have to go back and spend a lot of money and go into debt and things like that. But you're going to have to put in time to learn things like a strategy we're going to talk about today. So today I want to talk about what is called a collar strategy. And I want to talk about the collar strategy because it's a strategy that can allow you to make money as the market continues to rise, or it can minimize how much you lose if the market drops. And when you're near all-time highs or at all-time highs, you need to have a strategy that can protect your principal more. And the collar strategy is one of those, right? It's part of what we call the safeguard strategy here at Dorian Trader, where you have 4 different strategies that make up the safeguard strategy: the cash secured put, the covered call, the collar, and the bionic bull. So we've talked about several of these already on this Outrunning the Cost of Living program. But we haven't talked about the collar strategy, and we're going to be talking about it a lot throughout 2026. But the collar strategy is just doing what is called a covered call. A covered call is when you have 100 shares and then you sell a call against it. Because when you sell a naked call, it's uncovered, right? That's why they come up with the term called naked. And it can be a lot of risk. It can technically have unlimited risk to the upside if you sell what is called a naked call. But if you have 100 shares and you sell a call and then it's covered because the shares are covering it. It's like having a house and you renting it out, where your shares is like your house and you're able to rent it out on a weekly basis, monthly basis, quarterly basis, yearly basis. You determine how you want to rent it out. That's the covered call. Well, the collar strategy is taking that covered call and then the monies that you receive for selling that covered call, you buy a put. And a put is like having insurance. like having insurance on your house. So, if a hurricane happens or if it burns down or whatever the case may be, you're not paying for all of that house you know, to start over. Well, that's the put in the collar strategy. And you can do this on a weekly basis to be able to outrun the cost of living. You can collect about $200 a week at least. You can set it up to collect that. And then that can be your additional monies to help outrun the cost of living. So let's say you collected $800 in a month's time frame, a 28-day period, 4 weeks. Well, that can be your car payment, your transportation payments that you do throughout the month. And that can go to covering a lot of your rent or mortgage. That can go to covering, a lot of your food, if not all of your food. But you're going to have some capital to be able to do that. So I'm showing the SPY, and the SPY is going for $689. So almost $70,000 you're going to need to be able to do something like this. Or you can do it some other things that are a lot less. But just to be crazy conservative, I'm showing the SPY. It's the S&P 500. It's playing an index. The index should never go out of business. If it does, we have greater problems than trying to outrun the cost of living. But if you're going to do a collar, once again, it's doing a covered call, and then it's taking some of those monies and buying a put. So let's just say we did this covered call here, and we're receiving about $393. What we would do is take that and buy a put. So let's say we decided we're going to buy a put down here at the 19 delta here at this 675. That's only going to give us just under $200. So that's buy a put a little lower than that. So right there. And this is a 7-day trade, and you're doing a collar strategy. You're going to receive $208 between the call that you sold and the put that you bought. You have the potential to make up to the call that you sold, so another $430, a total of $430, I should say. If you had $70,000 in your account, the brokerage firm would require you to put up $34,000 to be able to do this trade. You can collect, let's just say, $200 a week times 4. That would equal $800. That can significantly help you outrun the cost of living. That can just be savings, perhaps. But if you need this to not be going into debt or going less into debt, this can definitely help. And it's a number of different ways we teach here at Dorian Trader to help members be able to do things like this. This is just an introduction, not going in too deep, because we're already at the time limit today. But this is something that you can learn about. If you're interested, we encourage you to reach out to us. You can join our trading club for a flat $60 for 3 months. It's a trial period with the code YouTube. You can just go to DorianTrader.com, go under memberships, choose the trading club, use the code YouTube for $60 flat fee for 3 months. You can cancel at any time. We'll help you learn to do strategies that can outrun the cost of living on a weekly basis. We literally do it on a weekly basis. Now, some key takeaways. Now, I think the main takeaway is that gone are the days that you can do everything right, textbook wise. You can do well in elementary. You can do amazingly in high school and go to a very good college and do awesome at your college. Come out of college, get your master's, finish that, and immediately start making $100,000. $100,000, you're 25, give or take, and you're making $100,000. And you can be significantly feeling like you're falling behind because you're paying back thousands of dollars of student loans. You have to buy a house in the area that is close to your job, which is probably some major city, and that house is going for a lot more than $400,000. You have to get transportation, and cars are not cheap anymore. Yeah, you can buy a used car, but used cars still cost, got maintenance and things like that. You can literally feel like you did everything right and you still falling behind. You need more to it these days. You need to learn how to invest. And we believe here at Dorian Trader that options is the key. Options will help you do buy and hold better. Options help you protect your capital better. Options allow you to be able to get into things at discounts. You need to learn options, at least at a basic level, and it can help you significantly in this new age of rising cost, constant rising cost. With that said, we thank you for joining us this morning, and we hope to see you next week on Outrunning the Cost of Living. Every week we do it at 8:30 Eastern Time to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're interested in joining Dorian Trader, use the code YouTube on our website, and you'll be able to get that $60 flat amount for a 3-month trial. After that, it's our regular price of $125. It's definitely going to be worth it. We hope to see you in the trading club. For now, everyone, try to have a great week. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.